My name is Clara. I am 34 years old. Last Tuesday, the CEO of the firm where I worked as a lead engineer fired me for being asleep at my desk, completely unaware that I had spent the previous 72 hours preventing a $200 million system crash. As he gestured toward the exit, his hand was shaking, and the fluorescent lights hummed with a cold, unforgiving buzz. He believed he was clearing out a liability, not realizing he was dismantling his own safety net. Before I tell you how the board reacted when the system went dark the following morning, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story about justice and professional integrity resonates with you. Drop your city and local time in the comments. I truly love knowing where you are all listening from. The architecture of my life had been built upon the blueprints of a family that valued appearances above all else. My father, Arthur, managed a regional wealth management firm where the walls were lined with mahogany and the atmosphere was always thick with the scent of floor wax and ambition. My mother, Alina, was a fixture of the local country club committee. Her life a series of luncheons and charity galas where the quality of one's handbag was often conflated with the quality of one's soul. They were people who lived in a state of performative perfection, where the only thing worse than a mistake was the appearance of one. My sister, Julianne, was the living embodiment of their values. She floated through life with an ease that felt designed to highlight my own inherent discomfort. The disparity in their treatment of us was not something they ever stated outright. It was displayed in 1,000 small, quiet ways that accumulated over time, like sediment. I remember my high school graduation clearly. The auditorium was stifling, the air heavy with the smell of floor cleaner and cheap flowers. My father had promised to take us to a celebratory dinner, but as the ceremony ended, he checked his watch. His brow furrowed. "Julianne has that dance recital audition in the city," he said, not even looking at me as he adjusted his silk tie. "We'll celebrate your milestone another time, Clara." I stood on the edge of the stage, my diploma tucked under my arm, watching them walk away. They didn't look back. Yet, amidst this landscape of cold pragmatism, there was my Aunt Sarah. She was my father's estranged sister, a woman who lived in a drafty Victorian house filled with books and the smell of dried lavender. Sarah was a retired systems architect who had spent her career in the early days of mainframe computing. She was the one who saw the logic in my mind before anyone else did. She taught me that true power lay not in loud confrontations, but in understanding the underlying structure of a machine or a family, and knowing exactly where to apply the pressure to make it shift. The patterns of mistreatment were subtle, yet they burned with a steady, quiet intensity. When I was 12, I had saved enough allowance money to buy a telescope for the astronomy fair. On the day of the event, I returned home to find the box in the trash, replaced by a new, expensive tennis racket for Julianne. My father simply shrugged, his voice devoid of any real concern. "Tennis is a social sport, Clara. It's time you learned how to interact with people rather than hiding in the clouds." I didn't say a word. I just walked to my room and closed the door, the wood cool against my forehead. During my sophomore year of college, I worked 2 jobs to pay for a specialized certification in cloud infrastructure. I mentioned the completion of the program to my mother over Thanksgiving dinner, hoping for a moment of genuine recognition. She barely paused in her effort to perfectly slice the turkey. "That's nice, dear," she murmured, her eyes already scanning the room for any sign of a stained napkin. "Though I don't see why you bother with all those cables. Julianne is interning at the gallery next summer, much more refined." The year I landed my first major contract, I was invited home for an anniversary party. I arrived with the news of a promotion. My father didn't ask about the work. He spent the entire evening bragging about Julianne's new apartment in the city, an apartment he had secretly helped finance. When I tried to interject, he merely patted my hand with a dismissive, patronizing smile. Don't be jealous, Clara. Focus on being happy for your sister. The inciting incident occurred on a rainy Monday, October 14th at 7:32 p.m. I was in the company's server room, working late to troubleshoot a latent vulnerability I had identified in our primary data architecture. The lead engineer, a man named Marcus, had been rushing the deployment to satisfy the CEO's desire for a flashy launch. He had bypassed the stress tests I had explicitly flagged. The witness was the night shift security guard, Mr. Henderson, who had stepped into the hallway to check the coffee machine. He saw me at my terminal, my face pale in the light of the monitors, my hands steady as I manually rerouted the load. When the CEO, Mr. Sterling, stomped into the room, he didn't look at the screens. He didn't ask what I was doing. He saw me, tired and disheveled from 3 days of constant vigilance, and decided that my presence was an affront to the company's image. Sleeping on the job? He barked, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. Mr. Henderson stood near the doorway, his eyes wide as he witnessed the interaction. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain the $200 million disaster I had just averted. I simply looked at Mr. Sterling, said a quiet understood, and began to pack my bag. I had done nothing but protect the firm, and in return, I was being discarded. If you have ever felt that your contributions were invisible until the moment they were no longer required, you know the precise weight of that silence. Please consider subscribing if this resonates with you. In the weeks that followed, I did not retaliate. Instead, I began my strategic preparation. Aunt Sarah's lessons on structural integrity were finally being put to use. I had spent years documenting every bypassed protocol, every ignored warning, and every instance of professional malpractice I had witnessed under Mr. Sterling's leadership. I had copies of the audit trails, the emails from Marcus confirming the bypassed safety tests, and my own detailed notes on the system's architecture. I consulted with a legal firm specializing in corporate fiduciary responsibility. I organized my documentation into a precise, chronological binder. There were moments of doubt, late nights when I stared at the ceiling, wondering if I should just walk away. The fear was a cold knot in my stomach. But then, I would open my notebook, look at the evidence, and remember the calm, steady logic that Sarah had instilled in me. I was not being vindictive, I was being precise. I was waiting for the perfect moment to ensure the truth was finally revealed. The public reckoning arrived during the annual shareholder gala. It was a high-stakes event held in a ballroom filled with over 200 of the company's most important stakeholders, investors, and board members. Mr. Sterling stood at the podium, preparing to deliver a speech about the company's unprecedented stability and technological prowess. As he began to speak, I walked to the front of the room. The silence that followed was absolute. I didn't shout. I didn't cause a scene. I walked to the head table, where the board members sat, and placed my binder in front of the board chairwoman. I spoke in a level, factual tone that carried through the microphone. I presented the audit reports. I detailed the specific safety tests that had been bypassed for the sake of the launch. I named the dates and the times. When I finished, the ballroom was as quiet as a church. Mr. Sterling's face was a mask of shock, his fork clattering against his plate. The board members began to turn the pages of the binder, their expressions shifting from irritation to profound alarm. By the time I walked out of the ballroom, there was a palpable sense of movement, whispers, hurried phone calls, and the sharp, sudden realization of the truth. In the ensuing months, the consequence cascade followed with the inevitability of gravity. Mr. Sterling was removed from his position by a unanimous board vote. The firm suffered a massive decline in stock value as the news of the bypassed protocols became public knowledge. Investors pulled their funding, and the company faced a series of regulatory audits that revealed years of systemic negligence. Marcus, the lead engineer who had been so eager to please, found himself blacklisted across the industry. I remained entirely passive. I gave no interviews. I posted nothing on social media. I simply continued my life, finding solace in the quiet routine of my own consultancy firm, where integrity was the primary design principle. My new life was anchored by the chosen family I had built, Aunt Sarah, who sat at my table every Sunday for dinner, and a small circle of professional peers who valued competence over performance. We would sit in my sunlit kitchen, sharing a simple meal of roasted vegetables and fresh bread. The air would be filled with the sound of genuine laughter and the clinking of mismatched china. My past, with its cold expectations and performative family, felt like a distant, faded photograph. I had replaced the performance with something tangible, something real. My new life was anchored by the chosen family I had built, Aunt Sarah, who sat at my table every Sunday for dinner, and a small circle of professional peers who valued competence over performance. We would sit in my sunlit kitchen, sharing a simple meal of roasted vegetables and fresh bread. The air would be filled with the sound of genuine laughter and the clinking of mismatched china. My past, with its cold expectations and performative family, felt like a distant, faded photograph. I had replaced the performance with something tangible, something real.